Alrighty, folks. So today, what we're going to be looking at in Onshape are two new tools that will hopefully make working in this program a lot easier for you. Both of these tools have to deal sort of with, whenever you have to make parts that are symmetrical. And most things you create will have probably some kind of symmetry in them. If you look at your phone, for example, and we drew an imaginary line down the center of your phone, everything we see on the left side is going to be the same as we see on the right side. And just many things that exist, many products that exist in the world are just symmetrical, because part of it is aesthetic, right? A symmetrical looking object is oftentimes more aesthetically pleasing than one that's not. And so again, both the tools that we're going to be using today are going to help with that. And the way you're going to get these tools down is you're going to end up doing this. You're going to use these tools to make a snowflake. It's kind of the holiday season or whatever. And you're going to make a snowflake, which we will then 3D print, and you'll hopefully be able to take home at some point. And now here you can see kind of the one that I've already done, right? This was my practice. And we can see just this simple snowflake. Now, the sky's the limit with this project. You can do anything you want as long as it's school appropriate, right? I've seen people in the past turn these individual spokes, or we'll call them maybe branches. I've seen people turn these spokes into snowmen, and it ends up looking pretty neat once they make the pattern go all the way around. So really, you have as much creative freedom as you want with this one. What I do ask is that you try not to copy what I have here, all right? Try to really make it your own and just go crazy with these shapes and have some fun with it. So to get started, right, we need to be at the main Onshape window like this, all right? And of course, like always, you're gonna hit Create and you're gonna go to Document. Now, one thing I want you to get in the habit of doing is save this as your last name and then what the project name is. So this is going to be your last name, Snowflake, and we're going to say okay. And now you're asking, okay, what plane do I got to work in, Mr. Richards? Well, we're going to work in the top plane. And the reason we're going to work in the top plane is, think of it like this. So the top plane is basically, we'll call it like maybe the top of your desk right now. And when I print these, I need those parts to be able to lay flat on the top of that desk. Basically, there's a little table inside the printer, and I need those parts to lay flat on that table so that they'll print effectively. If we had them standing up, then the way the printer works layer by layer, it's not going to be able to do that. So we got to design them in the top plane so that they end up laying down when they're finished. So the way Mr. Richards likes to start sketches in any plane for that matter is I like to right click and then new sketch. Again, if you're using a Chromebook, you can hold Control and click, and then that'll allow you to effectively basically do a right click. So I right click, I hit new sketch, I'm in my new sketch, and now I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to go view normal to, so that I'm looking at this thing straight on. Now, before we begin, we have to give ourselves two guidelines. So I'm going to go over here to my line tool, and I'm going to turn on construction. And again, I'm turning it on as a construction line because it's just there as a guide. And it's there to make sure that I don't make the snowflake too big. Basically, I don't want your snowflakes being any larger than 3 inches. And so by setting up these lines in the way we're going to set them up, it's going to give us that point of reference when we're designing these things and prevent them from being too large. And so I'm just going to go here to the origin. I'm going to draw one line this way, hit escape, turn on my line tool again, turn it back on as a construction line, and I'm going to draw a line going this way. So we've got a line going along our x-axis, and we've got a line going along our y-axis here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give those lines the dimension we need to keep this thing the right size. So we're going to type in 1.5 for this one, and we're going to type in 1.5 for this one. Now you might be asking yourself, well, Mr. Richards, you said our snowflakes had to be, 3 inches in size. Why did we plug in 1.5? Well, that's because when we copy everything that's happening over here in this corner, when we copy everything that's happening over in this corner down to here, and then down to here, and then over here, we're effectively going to be doubling these measurements. So for example, when I can show you right now, if I copy this line down to here, now I'm going to have 1.5 plus 1.5, which is 3, right? So now that we've got these guidelines set up, we're going to add one last guideline. And that one's going to go from the middle here. And it doesn't have to be any particular length. It just has to be rather long. And the most important thing with this line is we have to make sure it's at 45 degrees. And so again, you can take your dimension tool, and not only does your dimension tool measure the length of lines, but we can also measure the angle between 2 lines by clicking on them. So I clicked on this line, then I clicked on this line, and now it's allowing me to measure that angle. And I'm going to pull this measurement way over here so that it's not in my way when I'm working. So I set that to 45. Now all my guidelines are locked in. I'm pretty much ready to go. All right. And now this is where things start to get pretty interesting. And this is where we're going to introduce our first new tool. I'm going to go up here to this tool called Offset. All right. Again, if you're using a Chromebook, your toolbar might look a little bit different than mine, but I promise this Offset tool does exist somewhere on your toolbar. I'm going to grab that tool. I'm going to click on the line I want to copy, which is this one here, and then a line's going to appear. And if I click this arrow, I can decide where that line gets placed. And what this Offset tool is doing is it's making sure that the line that's being copied is perfectly parallel with your reference line or whatever else it is you're working on, which can be incredibly useful from time to time. So I want my line going this way, so I'm going to click again. And now I want this measurement to be a 1/16 of an inch. And so I don't know what the decimal for a 1/16 inch is off the top of my head, at least not easily. I could figure it out in a moment. So since I don't know what it is off the top of my head, I can just do 1/16, right? Because slash is the divided sign. So I can do 1/16, and when I hit enter, it automatically does the math for me. So I don't have to try to figure it out, which is great because math can sometimes be frustrating for a lot of people, right? So now I've got this line offset here. The other line I'm going to offset is this one right here. Now, however, it's putting that line in the wrong direction. I don't want that line over there. I want it on the other side. So again, I can click on this little arrow. Now my line's going to the side I want it to be. And I can click again. And now I'm typing in 1/16 again to get that line set up where I want it to be. And so now this is where I can start adding in the details of my snowflake. And you could, if you have an idea that you're trying to go for, this is where, you could start trying to implement that. But if you're trying to just kind of see what happens and what it comes out to be, this is where you could get a little bit random with your line placement, okay? The only key thing here is to make sure you have closed shapes. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. So I'm going to put a point here, because what I'm going to eventually do is I'm going to trim off this line. So I'm going to put a point there because I want this one to be on the short side. And I'm only going to add maybe, I don't know, I'm going to add one branch to this one. I'm going to keep this one pretty plain, pretty simple. Okay. So I've got those features drawn in there. Now I've got this long one, and I want the snowflake to be as big as possible. So I'm going to take right from the point here, and I'm going to make this line like this. And then now I'm going to start adding in some more detail to this one. So maybe I decide, okay, I'm going to come off of this one like this, maybe. We'll say maybe something like this. It's going to come to a point like so. And then it's going to come back down here like this. And then I want that to have maybe, you know, a little branch. Kind of feel like Bob Ross right now. You might not know who Bob Ross is, but the key to Mr. Bob Ross was happy little trees. And I know these lines aren't perfect. You know, I'm trying to just show you folks this real quick. You know, again, if you wanted to make this perfect, you could very easily by using the mirror tool, which I'm going to show you in a moment. So I've got some detail added in here. I'm going to also add maybe just another little piece right here. Okay. And so there, I've detailed out my snowflake. Now I've got to come back in with the trim tool, which we were talking about last time, right? The scissor tool. And I'm going to remove the pieces I don't need. So I don't need that big long line that was going into outer space there. I don't need this one here. I don't need this one here or this one. Yeah, I removed the wrong one. Good thing we have that undo button. But I don't need this one here. And the reason I'm removing these pieces is I'm trying to create one solid shape, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say my mouse is stuck inside, here, I'll zoom in. Let's say my mouse is inside this box, this shape that we have drawn here. Well, if I want to move my mouse over to this shape, I can't because I'm technically hitting this line here. So I need to get rid of that, right? So that's a quick way you can figure out if you need to remove a line. You can place yourself in a shape, and then if your mouse can't freely move to the next shape, then that means you probably have a line that needs to be removed. And so I've got to also get rid of these ones. And now I'm left with this shape here within these two dotted lines, okay? Now, again, you're not trying to copy me, okay? You're trying to, you know, you're doing the same processes and similar functions, but again, I want you to have your own creative freedom when you're doing this, all right? So please don't try to copy exactly what I'm drawing. And now you might be wondering, all right, why are some of these lines blue and why are some of them black? Well, the ones that are black, they're black because they have constraints on them. And the ones that are blue technically don't have constraints. So if I, you know, if I was doing a professional piece or something like that, I would want to make sure that I had all of these lines locked in place by using the relations up here. But we're not quite there yet. So, you know, we're not going to worry about it too much. This is going to be fine for just this little project we're doing. So now, you know, we've used the offset tool to offset lines from other lines, but now this is where the next big tool comes into play. And this is the one that's probably going to save you the most amount of time as you progress into some of the drawings we're going to be doing here throughout this course. I can go up here to this tool called Mirror. And Mirror is really neat. So Mirror has you select a line you want to copy along, and then it has you then select the things you want to copy, and it makes an exact mirror copy of them. So what that's going to look like, I can click, it tells me right here in blue, select a mirror line. So I want a mirror along this dotted line, and then it tells me select entities to be mirrored. So I can now start clicking these individual lines, and you'll notice as I click on them, it starts to replicate them on the other side of that yellow line for me. Oop. Now, if you get this error message, it might be because you accidentally clicked on a dot. So you can't click on the dots, you just have to click on the line segments themselves. And so I'm selecting all of these line segments, And I'm doing this until my whole drawing starts to appear over here. So I've only got a few left, right? I got to do this one. Oh, I missed one. I missed all of the pieces of this stem, right? I got to zoom in a little bit to be able to click on that one. So it's starting to make those pieces over there. And so now I have copied everything that was between this dotted line and this dotted line over to here. And I can hit escape. All right, so now I have, you know, if we pictured this as 4 quadrants, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants here, right? If we picture this as 4 quadrants, we now have a quarter of our snowflake drawn in 1 quadrant. And now it would be a real pain in the butt if I had to try to hand draw all that in these other 4 quadrants. And so that's why, again, we have this mirror tool to make our lives a lot easier and a bit more efficient. So again, I can grab my mirror tool. This time I'm going to mirror along this line. And now you're thinking, man, that was so tedious clicking every single one of those individual lines. I wish there was a better way of doing that. And there is. You can click every single one of those individual lines if you want, but the easiest way is you can click and drag a box to select everything you want to copy. All right, and you can see immediately it redrew it for me down there below. On a Chromebook with a trackpad, that might be difficult. Okay, so you might, if you're using a Chromebook with a trackpad, you might find that you're going to have to click every individual one of those lines. And if you have to do that, I apologize, but just persevere through it because it's really not that bad. But if you have the dexterity to be able to drag and drop a box like that, that might be your best bet. And so now I've copied everything down to this lower quadrant. I can hit escape to release that tool. And now all I have to do is copy everything from here over to here. And so again, I grab that mirror tool. I'm selecting this dotted line as my mirror line. And now I'm going to draw a box, or I'm going to click and drag a box to select all of those pieces and flip them over to the other side. And then this is where you start to see your work come to fruition. Okay. So then I'm going to hit escape again to release that tool. And now I'm basically done drawing my snowflake. So I'm going to hit extrude, and I'm going to change my camera angle just so that we can see it extruding. And so this extrusion height is way too big, right? This is too fat of a snowflake. We need to keep these snowflakes nice and thin. So I'm going to set them, I'm going to have you set them to 1/8 of an inch. So we can do 1 divided by 8, or we can type in 0.125, whatever is easier for you. If I do 1 divided by 8, I hit enter. And then I say, okay. And just like that, I've created a snowflake. I'm going to go back to my top view. And we've created this great snowflake. But now if we wanted to hang it on a tree or something, we've put in nothing that allows us to do that. All right. So to be able to fix that, I'm going to right click here on the top of this, and I'm going to go new sketch. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hole right here to hopefully give me a spot where I can put a string. And so I grab this circle, and I don't think I am, okay. And I bring the mouse over, and you can see the dotted line appearing as a guide. I'm snapped right here to the middle. And so I'm just going to draw a circle right in about this area. Again, this is just kind of it's just a snowflake. It's not, you know, this isn't like a part that somebody's life's going to rely on. It's not going in a jet engine or a car engine or anything, right? We're just kind of doing this as more of a craft and a way to learn 2 tools. So I draw a circle. I'm being very careful to make sure that my circle isn't, that I'm still leaving some meat here, because we don't want this to break, right? This could become a weak point once we drill this hole out, So I'm trying to keep this a little thick. My hole ended up being about 0.083. Again, you don't really have to stick to a specific size, just kind of, it doesn't have to be an exact thing in this situation. So now I've got that circle there. We're going to extrude it. Again, I'm going to switch just over to isometric so you can see. And this is where I would ask you folks, okay, this is wrong, right? Like, I don't want to add material. I want to be cutting it out. So then remember, this is where you go over to this little menu here on the left side of the screen. We click remove, and we're going to change that from blind to through all. And then we're going to say, okay. So now if I go back to my top view again, we have a nice, pretty snowflake that's ready to be printed. And given the size of it, it's something I could probably print pretty quickly. So if you folks could please do this, and when you're finished, if you could upload a screenshot of it to Google Classroom, in a future meeting, we'll talk about how we can get your Snowflake file to me so that I can print them out, which would be pretty neat. So hopefully you learned something. Again, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please do not hesitate to ask me, but good luck and have at it.